Welcome everyone to Goodknits. I'm Sherry and this is my channel here on YouTube where I talk about all things knitting. This is podcast episode number 20 and it's just going to be a typical knitting podcast. I don't have any finished objects to share today because I had so many in my last episode, so if you're more interested in finished objects, I'd suggest going and checking out episode 19. Today I do have a lot of WIPs and I'm actually filming this episode much earlier than I usually would simply because I have had crazy cast on energy the past week and I'm making really quick progress on some of the things that I'm working on, so I figured better to get in an episode now, talk through the many thoughts that I have on things before I get too far along. We have one acquisition today, but this episode is really going to be much more focused on my WIPs and I am super excited to talk about them because they are both completely new projects, or at least two of the four completely new projects. I've never talked about them here. I've never even mentioned the patterns here before, so those will be totally brand new to you guys, and actually I think both of them are also new patterns that just came out. And I do have one small yarn acquisition, but yeah, I'll touch on that a little bit, but this is really going to be a works in progress heavy episode. Before I get started today though, I do just want to quickly touch on the last episode where I mentioned the fires in Jasper and gave you guys a link to donate to support the community there. Thank you so much for the overwhelming support and really sweet comments on that video. It really meant a lot to me. I am happy to report that the town of Jasper has opened back up as of Friday, August 16th, I believe. So people from the community are able to start going back into town, moving back if they choose. Obviously, it's going to take quite a while still to rebuild. So while the fires definitely were scary, I'm very happy that people are able to start getting back to some level of normalcy. So just thank you again for everybody that supported on that last video and anybody that donated. It really means a lot, and hopefully that will go a long way towards helping the community rebuild faster. With all that being said, let's just go ahead and get started because I think today is going to be quite a chatty episode and I have a lot of things to say on my new WIPs. For the first WIP that I want to share today, this is completely brand new, and if you've been watching this channel for a while, you will know from, I believe, my spring and summer knitting plans video, I had said that I was planning to knit the marigold tee from Winter's Weather Knits, who's a Canadian designer. And I've been really attracted to this pattern for a while. It looked really interesting to knit because you kind of knit across the side and then I believe join the front and back. And I had been planning to use my Lithuanian 100% linen yarn that I picked up when I was in Vilnius back in May. And that pattern has definitely been on my mind. I've been looking at what yarn I could pair it with because I would need a contrast color for that more textured stripe. But I was starting to run into challenges. I originally was thinking maybe I would do kind of a cream color for the contrast stripe, but in my mind it just didn't really feel like it went with this purple color. And then I was thinking maybe I would pair it with a kind of tone-on-tone purple, so find something a bit darker or lighter than this and do a really low contrast version of that t-shirt. But the more that I looked at yarn, the more I really thought that through, and also really thought through what is linen going to be best for. I realized that probably wasn't the pattern for me. And I think when I was doing the summer yarns video, I was looking at pictures of the Antigone yarn from Durarum Natura, and they're 100% linen. They had a swatch done up in more of a lace pattern. And I started to think through 100% lace because it really doesn't have a lot of texture to it. It felt like it would lend itself very well to a lace style pattern. And therefore, maybe putting it into the marigold tee wasn't the best way to actually highlight this yarn and make the most of it. So I decided to go back to the drawing board also because this way I wouldn't have to buy a contrast yarn. It would save me a little bit of money. I think I do have enough of this. I have 3 skeins of 100 gram cakes, and these are 300 meters per 50 grams, so 600 meters per, and I can still hold this double and probably get a t-shirt out of it. I also realized the marigold tee is still very much on my mind as something that I want to knit, but I think what I'm most drawn to is actually the colors in the picture that the designer used. So that darker green paired with the cream, that's what's really attracting me to that pattern, as opposed to the pattern itself, right? Like, I'm very invested in the way that the designer created it, and that's really how I want to bring it to life for me. So until I'm ready to do it in that green color, probably more of like a pure silk yarn, I'm just going to put that on the back burner. And therefore I did start to research what options were available to me for lace fingering weight patterns where I could just use the linen by itself in a t-shirt or a tank top. So I put my filters into Ravelry. I started to do some digging, and I noticed a lot of lace patterns are round yokes, which I don't really love a round yoke on me. I think it just accentuates all the wrong areas and it just doesn't give enough shape. So I really didn't want to do a round yoke. I also didn't want to do any sort of spaghetti strap tank top. So my options were feeling a little bit limited. And then I came across the Stromboli tee by Caitlyn Hunter, which I believe is also Boylan Knitworks. And I've heard of Caitlyn Hunter before, but I've never really had any of her patterns saved, never really kind of been on my radar. And I came across this tee and instantly I was like, okay, that seems like the pattern for this yarn. And I actually didn't realize that it had just come out. So I think I picked it about a week and a half ago, and I think it came out a few days before that because I saw Leslie from Knit California talking about it. So yeah, I didn't even intend to pick a brand new pattern, but that's just the way that it worked out. So I ended up buying the Stromboli tee, did my swatch, ended up being off gauge. So the pattern calls for, let me just check, 22 stitches by 32 rows within the pattern, and I had 24 by 38 on the 3.25 millimeter needles. So I decided to switch to the 3.5 because this linen yarn really does not bloom much at all, and it's very structured and tight. Like, it doesn't have a lot of give to it, which also I'll get into it in a second. But before we get too far into the details of this, let me show where I'm at. So this is currently my progress on the Stromboli tee. So I have done 4.5 repeats, I believe. Oh, 5. I've done 5.5 repeats so far. So this is how it's working up. It is an 8 row repeat. And for my size, so I'm doing size 1, there's 6 sizes available for this pattern. This is worked bottom up, as you can see, which makes it quite difficult to try on. So I am hoping that everything will be okay because I have 3 more repeats to go, and then I'm meant to split for the front and the back sections. So I will just kind of gauge at that point how this is sitting on my body. This has been a bit of a slog to knit. So it's kind of one of those designs where it's not super hard to memorize the pattern. Like, I'm at a point where I've got it down. I can kind of turn my iPad off and not pay attention to the chart and then just reference back to it as needed. But it's just in this linen yarn, it's these 2 strands, and they obviously aren't really sticking together. They're constantly kind of splitting themselves up. They slip out of my hand all the time. They are just very annoying to work with. So I think this pattern would be more enjoyable probably in a yarn that's a little bit softer and more enjoyable to work with, but it's not enjoyable in linen. It is coming out really, really nice as a pattern, in this material. But I've realized I need to say, okay, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna do 4 rows at a time, and then put it aside because my hand usually starts to hurt. And then later in the day I'll come back, I'll maybe do another 4 rows, but I've kind of committed myself to 4 rows per day, because I feel like if I put this down for too long, I'm just gonna be like, you know what, that's not really fun to work on. I'm not gonna come back to it. Whereas this is, when did I cast this on? Cast it on last Sunday. It's currently Sunday a week later. So this is a week's worth of progress, and it's actually a lot further along than I thought it would be, since it's, 3.5 millimeter needles, fingering weight yarn. I wasn't expecting to have made it this far, but I'm really committed to just doing my rows per day. For the most part, I have gotten a repeat down per day. And I think if I just keep with that, probably in the next few days, I'll already be to the point of splitting for the front and back. Because this is I think 22 stitch pattern, I have realized that I am not great with memorizing patterns, and I tend to get really distracted as I go. So especially, I forget how many stitches are on here at this point. It's 200 something stitches, and I know, having worked on that Fancypepitasskirt that I'll show you guys in a second, even on like a very small piece of fabric, there are so many times where I get to the end of a row and realize I'm a stitch off and I have to tank back and redo it. And I just don't want to go through that. So I was trying to think through, how do I set myself up for success on this pattern so that it doesn't drive me crazy and I'm not spending all my time tanking. And what I decided to do is, so you have your just like in general beginning of round, and then there's like a few splits for different parts of the pattern. And then what I decided to do was add in, can you see? Yeah, here. So I added in all these additional stitch markers every 22 stitches, because that is how big the pattern is. It doesn't change, at least on this bottom section. And I know how many repeats I need to do per side, like front and back. So I added in stitch markers every 22 stitches so that I know when I get to the end of that 22, if I'm a stitch off, it means I did something wrong in that pattern repeat. I need to tank back, but then I only need to tank back for that 22 stitch section. And there's definitely been multiple times where I've had to do that. I mess up somewhere, I miss a yarn over, I didn't do a knit 2 together, whatever it might be. So that has been a lifesaver for me. I don't know if I've ever thought of doing that before. I don't know if I've ever really even seen anybody else do that on podcasts. But for me, that is helping out so much, because yeah, if I was just getting to the end of each round, realizing I was off, trying to tank back in this dark yarn in this linen, I would have already given up this project. It would have been abandoned, and I would have said, you know what, the linen is not gonna have life this summer. I'm just gonna let it go and pick it back up next year. So if you also struggle with lace patterns or any sort of repeat that has so many stitches and you're constantly missing something, forgetting, and then having to tank back, I would recommend just putting in all these extra stitch markers for yourself so that okay, I am correct within this part of the repeat. So that is one way that I have been surviving this pattern. One thing with this pattern is it has this knot stitch, which I've never done before. And there's just something about so there's like a knot stitch at the start, you do your kind of pattern repeats with the yarn overs, and then at the very end of that 22 stitch section, there's another knot stitch. And for some reason, I just have a tough time remembering it on the rows where it's happening. So I do have like the odd section that just has this kind of missing knot stitch, but especially in this dark purple in this yarn, I don't find it noticeable enough to go back and fix it. And I think I've only done it twice, which surprises me. I thought I'd done it a lot more, but that's all that I'm seeing in here. So yeah, this is the Stromboli tee. I think pattern's been really clear. The first time I read it through, I was a little bit confused, but as I've been working on it, everything is going really smoothly. I'm holding the linen double on this, and I have 3 total cakes of it. So I should have just enough yarn to get this done. Worst case, I just shorten the sleeves, which I might want to do anyway, simply because the knot stitch is pretty much the pattern making up the entirety of the sleeves, and I hate working that knot stitch in this linen because it doesn't really stretch nicely. Like if you've ever worked the knot stitch before, you have to pick up the 3rd stitch and drop it over the first 2, and trying to drag that yarn over my needles in this linen is really, really hard. So I'm not looking forward to doing the sleeves when it's just pretty much made up entirely of knot stitches. So yeah, if I don't have enough yarn, I will just shorten the sleeves and deal with however long those happen to be. One other thing to say on this, I did mess up the rib at the bottom. It was meant to be done on, I think, 3mm needles, or basically a 1/4 millimeter smaller than your main needle. And I completely missed that in the pattern. So I did the whole cast on. It was so annoying in this linen. The yarn just kept splitting as I was trying to do the cast on, and then trying to work that first round in this linen was just really, really difficult. So I got, I think, halfway through the ribbing, realized I was on the wrong needle, and just decided, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna keep going, and I'll just live with the ribbing being a little bit bigger on this, which honestly I think might be fine because the linen, like I said, doesn't have a lot of give to it. So maybe it's actually for the best that I did the ribbing on the wrong needle, so that this for sure will fit the way that I want it to. That's what I'm going to tell myself, because I just don't want to go back. I also timed myself working a round of the knits, or the pattern repeat on this, on an easier round. It took me roughly 13 minutes. So I'm pretty sure the rows that are more complex with the knits or the knot stitches, I think are closer to 20. So basically, to do the 8 rows on here, it's at least 2 hours of knitting just for 8 rows. So that's been interesting to think through, just for how much time this actually takes per pattern repeat. At least for me, I'm not the fastest knitter. So that is my Stromboli tee by Caitlyn Hunter. I don't know how much wear I will actually get out of this. I'm curious if it's gonna feel a bit too kind of bohemian for me with all this texture. It isn't really what I gravitate towards usually, but I really like this color. I do somewhat enjoy the process of making it. I think I would enjoy it a lot more if it wasn't on linen yarn, but the linen is really holding the texture nicely. So yeah, Stromboli tee. Don't think I have anything else to say about it. Yeah. So this has been a week of progress. Who knows how far we will be by the next episode. Then the next completely new WIP is one that I decided to cast on solely for the purpose of travel. So we were going to the Adele concert in Munich last week, which is where I picked up this t-shirt. And I literally didn't have anything that I could travel with. So my skirt, like my Fancypepitasskirt panels, were done. My cardigan, the Braidy loop cardigan, was just way too heavy to travel with, and it was 30 degrees in Munich, so no way I was going to work on that. And then obviously the Stromboli tee requires a bit more attention, and also this linen is really difficult to move around. It just completely unravels itself, so I didn't want to worry about ruining it with traveling. It's strictly an at-home knit. So I also didn't really have any yarn to cast on anything else for summer, so I was thinking maybe I would just buy a DK linen yarn and cast on like a Vegas top or something. Vegas from Suzanne Muller. But that didn't happen. So I realized that I had this mohair that I had mentioned in the last episode. So maybe I'll hold it the right way. The Filcolana Tilia in the antique rose that I was going to use for my popo jacket. I had 6 balls of this and was like, okay, maybe I will just try to find a pattern that's really simple that I can just hold the mohair double, and worst case, if I need to buy more yarn when I run out, then I will do that. And it just so happened that Moreca Knits just released her new Macaela sweater pattern. So I had originally been thinking I would do I think it's the Cloud sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl. But there was something about that fit that just didn't really feel right to me. And I think you're supposed to hold the mohair triple in that case. And I really didn't want to invest more money. And if I had to do that, then I wouldn't have the yarn in time for my vacation. So I was trying to find a pattern where I could simply hold the mohair double and it would be something that I would actually want to wear come the winter. So I wasn't just casting on for the sake of casting on, and I would have something I'd actually want to wear. So this is the progress of my Macaela sweater. And I cast this on last Friday before we left for the concert. And it's, like I said, Sunday. So a week and a half of work. I powered through this at the airport. So I pretty much only did all my knitting on the Friday before we left, and then at the airport, and then on the Sunday when we were coming home, also at the airport. And I had gotten through the entire body at that point and joined at the sides. So that was 2 days of knitting. This just flew by. I'm knitting a size small. It's on 5mm needles, and it's just straight stockinette. And I really like this pattern. You basically are doing, I think it's like a saddle shoulder side. So the way that you do it is like you cast on in the round, you do your increases for the shoulders, and then you split for the front and the back. And I just really like the overall look and feel of this. I love when a sleeve looks like it's actually a sleeve. So I think this is much more my sweater style that I like, as opposed to maybe just a straight drop shoulder or raglan. I really like the color. I'm not sure how practical this will be in my wardrobe as a sweater in this color, but I do plan to do a lot of fall shopping, so I'll try to find some pieces that can really pair nicely with this. I think it could be really good with like a fall skirt and boots. I am about, I think, 3/4 of the way through the sleeve right now, and maybe I'll just try to pop this on. Yeah, so I think overall it's fitting pretty well. The neckline will clearly make a big difference on this. I decided to stop the body where I did because I ran out of yarn for my first balls. Then I decided I'm going to do the sleeves and the neck, see how much yarn that takes. Then I still have 2 more balls left. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish with just the 6 balls that I have of this. I just might need to make it a bit more cropped than the pattern actually calls for. The pattern does say it only needs 7 balls of this yarn. So I have a feeling that last ball is just dug into for the neckline. And if I'm barely going to use any of it, because even the neck size up, the medium, also only calls for 175 grams. So I don't want to buy a whole other ball of yarn if I'm just going to use a very tiny amount of it. So I really want to make sure the sleeves are long enough on this, and then I will adjust the body length as needed, maybe even make the collar a little bit shorter. So I have options here, but yeah, this was really a knit just for vacation. And I'm so happy that I cast it on because I'm actually really, really happy with it. And I can see myself making even more of this sweater if I like the fit in the end. One thing on this pattern as well, so it's my first pattern I've ever made by Moreca Knit. and I'm really enjoying the process. Her patterns are actually really clearly written, so there are a lot of helpful videos. She even has a QR code that you can scan to go directly to the videos. Just one thing I found funny, so for increases, the German short rows, she has lots of helpful videos and instruction for those. But then for the front piece, when you are joining the two sides in the middle, so you know when you usually cast on stitches there, she calls for a long tail cast on to add those stitches as opposed to the backward loop method. And I've never seen that before. And so I was like, okay, long tail cast on in the middle of stitches. I have no idea how to do that. And that was the one technique that didn't have a video. Whereas later on for the sleeve or the underarm extra stitches, she calls for backward loop method, and she does have a video for that. So if you also don't know how to do the long tail cast on to add stitches in the middle of your project, I did find a really helpful video for it. I've put it in my Ravelry page. So if you are knitting this pattern and you're also a bit lost there, just go check out my Ravelry because I've got it linked so that can also help you. And I would just love to know from her why she chose not to have a video for that, because that of everything seemed like the most foreign kind of technique. At least I've never come across it. Maybe it's really common in her patterns to use the long tail cast on, but yeah, like I said, brand new to me. And I've knit quite a lot of sweaters. By the way, just to say, the Adele concert was incredible. So I was a bit worried that it was not going to live up to the expectation that I had, because tickets were, one, super hard to get, two, we're spending a lot of money to travel just to go to a concert, and three, it was 80,000 people in this venue. It was like a custom built open air theater in Munich that they did just for her. They had a whole Adele world with drinks and merchandise and everything, so you could come early and stay late. And I was like, okay, I really hate big events, and just, yeah, I don't like to be around that many people, and it's not my favorite way to see artists, is like in this huge venue where the artist is always like a tiny little blotch. I much prefer the intimate venues like we have here in Amsterdam of Paradiso, Melkveg, and it just feels like a lot more up close and personal. But the stage that they created for her, all the visuals that they had on the screens, there was fireworks, there was violin players lining the stage, there was a t-shirt cannon. I mean, they just went all out for this concert, and her voice was unbelievable. I mean, she sounded exactly like, if not better than, her actual albums. So I know not everyone is a huge fan of Adele, but for me, I figured that was probably a once in a lifetime experience. Who knows if I'll ever get a chance to see her again. And I'm just so glad that I did. I'm glad that we put up with all the people and the hassle of getting to the venue and the hassle of getting home, because it was 100% worth it. So let me know also if anybody else is going to Adele and what you thought if you did go. My third WIP is one that has actually been sitting dormant since April. So I mentioned this last podcast. It is my Fancypepitasskirt test knit. This is a pattern by Ann-Kathrin Stoll that is going to be released in her new book, which I am forgetting the name of, something Paris. Knits in Paris or something. It's available for pre-order now, but only available in German at the moment. But I believe she is planning to release it in English at some point. So yeah, this pattern is for that. I had been working on my first panel all the way back in April. I knit it in a weekend, was really enjoying the experience. And then I got distracted with all my other knits, especially my Milady's dress, and just sort of put it to the side, figuring I'd come back to it pretty soon. And we're now in August and I'm only just picking it up again. So I mentioned last time, it was quite hard to get back into the rhythm of the jacquard pattern, which is what this is. But once I got going, I did figure it out. And I just decided, okay, I just want to get this kind of done and over with because this is the hardest part of this pattern. So I decided to just spend a couple days really just working through it, making it my main project. So I finished this pretty much like right after filming the last episode. And this is knit in the Lana Grossa Landlust Alpaca Merino 160 in the colors 405 and 404. So I got that wrong last episode. So I think the 405 is this darker brown here. And then I didn't bring it, but then the 404 is this lighter color. So I decided to do, rather than the classic black and white, which doesn't really fit within my seasonal color palette, I opted to do more of this tone on tone brown. But I was thinking it through all week and realized, well, I think this is going to be a beautiful pattern. I'm not sure how practical it's going to be in my wardrobe. So at the moment, I don't have any brown boots or shoes to wear with it. I don't even really have any tops that go nicely with it. So I think I'm gonna have to go shopping. I was thinking maybe my sweater number 8 might work, but that's gonna be a bit too heavy for a while now. So I do think I just wanna go find a nice long sleeve, maybe rib shirt in either the darker brown or the lighter brown color. And maybe I wanted to buy anyway some knee-high boots, but eventually I do need to get some knee-high boots or some kind of sneakers that will work well with this brown, because I just don't think anything right now works. I have a lot of black shoes. I have a lot of black and white tops. And yeah, so it's a bit unfortunate. I think when I finish this, I'm really going to struggle to style it. What do you guys think I should wear with it? Like, what shoes would you pair with this skirt? What kind of top if we're really going into fall? I kind of want a more casual look because it's Amsterdam, so you can't really wear any high heels. It's not a practical footwear item for this city unless it's like a chunky heeled boot. So yeah, for those of you that are maybe a bit more stylish than me, I would love to know your styling tips because I do think this skirt's going to be really beautiful. I love a mini skirt. I think that really fits well in my wardrobe as an item. Any of the skirts that I do have for fall, I wear a lot. But I just think right now, these specific colors don't go with what I have. So I do need to really think that through to make this a more versatile item because I don't want to finish it and just sort of toss it aside. Now that I have my 2 panels here, the next steps will be I pick up stitches along the sides. So you pick up one side of one side of the other, you knit a few centimeters, I think like 7 or 8 centimeters. Then you join the sides, you do that on both cases, and then you knit a bit at the bottom to join the stitch or the skirt along the bottom edge, and then you knit the waistband and then insert elastic. So inserting that elastic is also going to be brand new to me. The pattern doesn't seem to have a ton of instruction for how to actually do that, so I'm going to have to try to find some YouTube videos. Again, if you've added a waistband before and you have tips, anything I should be aware of, any helpful videos, please send those through because I'm a bit nervous doing that waistband for the first time because I think that's really going to make or break the skirt and I want it to look as clean as possible and also fit properly. So that is the Fancy Pepita skirt. I am knitting the pattern on 4.5 millimeter needles. I'm doing this skirt in an extra small, which I'm a little bit worried right now based on how wide the panels seem, that they're not going to fit exactly like the pattern photos show. But I went back and I checked and the measurements that are in the pattern are what should work for me. I'd measured myself for the Milady's dress and those were all the measurements I had. That dress fits really well. I have put on a tiny little bit of extra weight since I did those measurements though and since I started this pattern. So yeah, maybe it's not going to fit exactly as I want, but I think it's an easy adjustment here because I can just knit extra stitches on the sides before doing that join. So it just might mean the panel in the front and back are a little bit skinnier than intended, but the overall skirt should still fit and shouldn't be a big deal if I need to make that adjustment. So yes, knitting 4.5 millimeter needles for the textured jacquard pattern because my tension on the 2-color work is a lot tighter, and then I'm going to switch to 4 millimeter for the stockinette. And then the only reason that I have not actually started adding the side panels for the skirt yet is because my 4 millimeter needles are currently being taken up by my Braidy loop cardigan because I'm doing the ribbing right now. This is the Braidy loop cardigan. Since the last episode I was here, and I've done this much. So I only had a few centimeters left of the stockinette body, and then now I am on the, I think it's 8 centimeters or so of ribbing, and then I'll be doing the bind off and then moving on to the sleeves. So yeah, this hasn't changed a whole lot since you last saw it. Still really happy with it. Knitting it in the Assayer Jensen yarn, held with the Assayer Silk Mohair, both in the color 2S. And I decided to just go ahead and cake up all the Jensen yarn that I had left. So it was 5 skeins. That way it's just done and ready. I have no excuses to not pick this pattern up and work on it. So it's not my most critical knit right now. I haven't been working on a lot this week because I've been really distracted and engaged in all these other WIPs. But also it was 30 degrees here for the majority of the week, and every time I would put this on my body to work on it, it was just way too hot. I hated it. So now it's starting to cool down again. I think I'll get back to this and just kind of do a few rounds per day to get this ribbing done. That's quite a slow process. And then obviously the Italian bind off, and then getting going on the sleeves. So it's patterned by Other Loops. Also first time doing an Other Loops pattern. Really enjoying it. I am seeing more and more of these cardigans pop up on my Instagram feed, and it's making me really excited to finish mine. So I'm hoping to have that done probably sometime in September. Those are all the active projects that I have right now, and I think I was able to make quite a lot of progress on all of them since I last filmed, and since that was only about a week and a half ago, I'm pretty happy with myself. I have been doing a lot of knitting. It was also my kind of final week off work, so I have been not working for the last few months, and I am actually starting a new job just on a freelance basis on Monday. So I was trying to kind of enjoy the last few weeks of freedom, and rather than pushing myself to keep doing chores and errands and that, I decided I'm just going to focus on knitting and enjoying that process because I've really had my knitting mojo back and wanted to take advantage. And then just moving quickly into acquisitions. So this was actually the project or yarn I bought for a project I had planned to cast on for Munich, but it didn't show up until a few hours before we were leaving. At that point, I'd already cast on the Macaela sweater, so I decided I'll just come to this when I'm ready. So I bought the Kremka Soul Wool Morning Salutation yarn in this beautiful green. So this is color 14, and I am loving this color. I am intending to make the Freestyle shirt from Suzanne Muller or Paula Strict. I really like the way my Sonia t-shirt fits, and I just think her patterns are really beautiful. There's always these nice little small details. So I saw that pattern, really like the look of it. Think I could get a lot of wear out of it, but didn't want to make it in a summer, like fun, bright color because I think that will be more of a transition item into fall. And maybe actually, do we think these two could pair together? Like if I made the t-shirt, would it go with the skirt? Maybe. I really love this green. It reminds me of the green from the camisole number 9 that I made. And I just think, yeah, that bottle green from Knitting for Olive is one of my favorites. So Very, very excited. I've never worked with this yarn before. It says it's vegan. What else can I tell you about it? It is 51% tencel or lyocell, which I also noticed in my summer knits video or summer knitting yarn. I kept saying Lysol. I'm shocked not a single person pointed that out to me, but lyocell, and 49% bum wool. Excited to work with this. I will probably cast on that t-shirt maybe even this week so that I can get a little bit more wear out of it before the season's over. But I think for the next week, I'm still just going to be really, really focused on making a ton of progress on the Stromboli tee, because that is not going to have a ton of purpose in fall just based on the color and the overall style. So I don't want to end up putting that on hold until next season because I'm worried I'll never come back to it. So I'd like to finish that. And then I'm just really enjoying the stockinette Macaela sweater. So those will probably be my main focuses. And then if I get to casting this on, I will. It'll probably just be the strip of the back panel because it seems, I quickly read through the pattern, has a very similar start to the Sonia tee, which is like you do a cast on, you have to thread in a lifeline so that you can go in and pick up stitches later. And that just is a little bit finicky as a way to get started. I was kind of hoping this one you would just cast on and work in the round and do raglan increases, but that's not the case. It's really like a back panel and then picking up and then joining, and yeah. So I'm not in a hurry to work on it. That is everything for today. Like I said, I am really enjoying my knitting right now. I'm also starting to feel those fall seasonal vibes, and my brain is going wild for fall knits. So I've now decided I really, really want a mini knit dress. I came across this dress on Cezanne's website and it's only in dark gray. It's like 150 euros. And I love the overall style, but I don't like the color and I don't like the price tag. So I want to try to recreate that for myself. And I did a poll on Instagram to see if anybody knew of a similar style to this dress as a knitting pattern. And nobody did. So I don't know if it just doesn't exist or if people just missed that poll. But if you do know of a pattern that is very similar to this, it could also just be a sweater that is similar in style that I could turn into a dress. Let me know. My initial thinking was perhaps the no frills sweater, but I don't know if the raglan is what I'm actually looking for. I was also thinking the Stockholm or the Oslo sweaters, but I don't know if I want the drop shoulder in that case. So then I've been doing a lot of searching for basic sweaters, and I came across actually from Moreca Knits the Bruno sweater, and I think that actually looks really, really close to what I would be wanting because it has more of a sleeve detail. So it looks like maybe a seam sweater design. So I think I will go with that. It has roughly 15 centimeters of positive ease, which I think would be perfect for the dress. And I'm thinking I will buy kind of a cream latte color for that. I'm thinking maybe the Filcolana Alva yarn. Yeah, Alva, paired with the Filcolana Tilia, and hold those together. And originally I was thinking maybe I would make it in a really dark burgundy, but when I really think through what I would wear that with in terms of accessories, boots, purses, jackets, I don't know if it's 100% going to work in my current wardrobe. So I think if I make it in more of a cream color, it goes with pretty much all my purses, all my jackets, and then I could wear it with black boots or brown boots. So yes, that is on my mind for fall knits right now. I am really kind of obsessed with this idea of making this dress for myself. I think that's something I'm going to buy yarn for pretty soon because I want to be able to make it. In general, I'm just really feeling like I want more knitted skirts and dresses. So I think that's going to be a bit of a theme for me going into fall. We'll talk about it more when I film my fall knitting plans video at some point in the next few weeks. But yes, that's on my mind. So also if you know of any amazing patterns for dresses or skirts that you think I would enjoy, please go ahead and let me know. Thank you so much for watching today. I've really enjoyed talking through all my current WIPs and just kind of sharing all this excitement that I'm having at the moment. If you really enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like. Also go ahead and subscribe, turn on bell notifications. I post podcast episodes roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, and I do have my wear test video upcoming, hopefully before the end of the month, where I look back at all the knits that I've made recently and how they're fitting into my life. And I will also have a seasonal knitting plans video coming shortly as well. So thanks for watching today, and I'll see you next time.